We're continuing the trend of Epoch riding on Nintendo's coattails. Though unlike Super Golf, Super Mahjong is a case where it's almost definitely intentional. The Famicom's Mahjong was a monster hit at the time. It was one of the major drivers of early sales for the system. Nintendo's Mahjong game wasn't the first Mahjong video game, but it was the first one that counted. And Epoch was directly copying their style with their own Super Mahjong. Mahjong is a set-building game similar to Rummy, but played with tiles instead of cards. The version that's popular in Japan is Riichi Mahjong, and it requires that players build particular kinds of hands before they're allowed to go out. To properly play Riichi Mahjong, you have to have 4 people, but that can be a bit much for a video game, and so the one that was commonly used there in the early years, and in particular for Super Mahjong, was a 2-player head-to-head variant. The gist of the game is on every turn you draw a tile, see if you have a complete hand that can go out, and then discard a tile. If the opponent discards a tile that will make a set or run for you, it's possible to pick it up. And here's where we get kind of complicated with Super Mahjong. Super Mahjong is the first game that we're seeing on the platform that uses the Select Pad, a 12-digit number pad similar to a phone. In the other games we've only had to press it to choose game modes, but here it handles the special commands that you need. The cartridge came with an overlay that you'd put on the pad so that you could know what every button does, but you could always just sit there at the title screen and the demo mode would show you what all the button presses were. The game offers 2 different modes, a timed mode, which will let you play as a timer counts down, and you can usually get 2 or 3 hands in before it reaches 0, and then there's normal mode, where you play a standard series of hands. Regardless of which mode you're playing, the action is the same. The right-hand button will draw a tile, the left-hand button will discard. And then if you need to take a tile from your opponent, declare that you're about to go out, or decide that you want to go out, you use an appropriate number from the pad. In terms of how Super Mahjong plays, I actually think it's worse than Nintendo's. The Super Cassette Vision's terrible controller does it no favors here, and it's really easy to squeeze and get the wrong thing discarded. It's kind of slow to respond as well. During a timed game, you're going to want to zip across the tiles quickly, but you have to slowly plink through them one by one. On top of that, the Super Cassette Vision has lower resolution graphics, and while they're hardly unreadable, it is a noticeable downgrade. While I may not be a skilled Mahjong player, it felt to me like the AI here wasn't particularly good. It isn't like there's multiple difficulty levels, and obviously it could beat me, but then I'm also awful at it and was just playing for some basic hands. I just got the impression that this AI wasn't a real deep thinker. What it comes down to is if you had your choice between the Famicom Mahjong that all of your friends and neighbors were playing and telling you was great, and you saw Super Mahjong sitting there, you'd buy the Famicom. Super Mahjong is competent. It's not a completely broken game, but it's not a Mahjong game anybody's going to go out of their way to play.